Right here in Washington, executives from troubled aircraft manufacturer Boeing spent a second day of contentious hearings with the National Transportation Safety Board tied to a mid-air flight incident in January. And for more on those hearings and everything Boeing, let's now turn to Ernest Arvai. He's president of the AirInsight Group. Ernest, thanks so much for coming on the show. I want to start by getting your perspective, sir. What's your takeaway from the 2 days of NTSB hearings tied to that Alaska Airlines incident? The testimony was damning. No paper trail to the document for the removal of 4 key missing bolts, allegations of retaliation of 2 Boeing employees over the mishap. How damning to Boeing were these revelations, in your opinion?
I think the revelations were very damning to Boeing in this situation. It's clear that someone made a mistake at Boeing by not putting the bolts back in. There's a hole in the safety system that allowed that to happen. It could be a paperwork error, as Boeing indicated, but the paper trail is just as important as the physical trail if you're trying to maintain a safety system. If I were Boeing, I would be worried about civil lawsuits and a finding of gross negligence in the future.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Now, Boeing stock is down about 35% year to date. How does the company come back from this? Can they come back? What are they doing to rebuild confidence in the safety of its aircraft? And how long does that take?
They can come back from it, but it's going to take quite some time because this is really a corporate cultural change that needs to happen at Boeing. Boeing, after the merger with McDonnell Douglas in 1997, turned to a very financially oriented management philosophy. And that philosophy permeated through the organization over the next couple of decades. So when you're managing people in terms of financial returns rather than the quality of the airplanes or the innovative features that one could engineer, but looking at the dollars and cents, it's a different way of managing. And changing that culture back to the old Boeing that was engineering driven and very proud of the aircraft it built and always trying to be innovative and the best in the world will be a difficult task. It took 20 years to get to this point. Hopefully it won't take 20 years to get back, but it may take 3 or 4 to really impact a change. And that's one of the reasons that Boeing went outside for their new CEO, Kelly Ortberg, and he had instituted a very positive culture at Rockwell Collins when he was CEO there. So we're hoping that he can do similar things at Boeing to help turn this company around.
And just how systemic was this failure, do you think? And how important is it that there's been this shakeup at the top, as you say, with the installation of Kelly Ortberg as a new CEO? So much has been made about the safety culture at Boeing. And for years, they were policing themselves, really, rather than the FAA doing the job.
Exactly. The FAA really was approving the systems and processes from Boeing, but never checking whether those processes and systems were carried out. So I think it was we'll approve your plans to do this, but we're never going to check if you really did it. And that's problematic from a regulatory standpoint. That's, of course, changing. Boeing's production rates are much lower than they were as they've slowed down to try and do things right. And they've taken corrective actions with some of their suppliers, including Spirit Aerosystems, which they're going to reacquire, where they're checking the fuselages as they come before they're shipped to the factory in Seattle at the site in Wichita, Kansas, so that if there are repairs that need to be done, they can be done immediately there by the people who did them originally. And before it gets shipped to Seattle, rather than ship it to Seattle, take the airplane out of sequence, create a lot of confusion on the shop floor, and part of that confusion may be why the door panel wasn't reinstalled properly, because you're moving airplanes around, you're doing things out of sequence. It's just not a normal manufacturing process. So I think that will help change the culture at Boeing and hopefully change the processes by having a little more hands-on supervision from the FAA.
Boeing is such a huge player in aircraft manufacturing, obviously. So many airlines rely on deliveries from them. What does all of this do to its customers, air carriers that are left scrambling because of delays? Now they're planning modifications to make sure this type of incident on Alaska doesn't happen again, all while they're dealing with slumping consumer demand.
It's a big dilemma for the airlines because they can't get the airplanes that they need to to replace older airplanes and to improve the efficiency of their fleet. The new airplanes, the 737 MAX and the competing Airbus A320neo family, offer about 16% better fuel economy than the planes before them, and airlines drink a lot of fuel. It's one of the major costs for an airline. So the getting these new airplanes is essential for airlines to remain competitive with each other. And when they're not available because of the production slowdowns, it just it hurts the entire industry.
Ernest, not too much time left, but want to get your take, switch gears and discuss Boeing's foray into space. What can you tell us about the furor over rumors that NASA may interject to bring back 2 astronauts back to Earth aboard a SpaceX vessel instead of Boeing's Starlink, which got the astronauts to the International Space Station earlier this summer amid rumored problems with Starliner?
Well, what we're hearing is that there's a disagreement among some of the players at NASA who are going to make the final decision as to how and when the astronauts come back home. But the problem is that the Boeing Starliner is occupying the one port that's available on the space station, so they've had to delay a SpaceX mission to come up while they look at either sending the Boeing craft home manned, which it's now designed to do, or unmanned. When they did the unmanned test to get to the space station, they had a special set of software on the capsule. That software was removed in favor of astronaut run software. So the software system that brought them there in the first place is no longer on the system to do it on an automated basis, and will have to be reloaded. Reloading software, testing it in space is going to take a few weeks at best. Before they can get that spacecraft off the space station and home without an astronaut or with an astronaut. So it's causing a delay. And now NASA has said that the 2 astronauts may be delayed until 2025 for their ride home, which would take their 2-week mission and make it an 8-month mission. That's kind of surprising.
You can't make this stuff up. Let's hope for Starliner and for those 2 astronauts, everything gets settled quickly and they come back quickly and safe. Thank you so much, Ernest Arvai, for your time.
My pleasure.